Welcome, everybody, coming at you live from New York. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. We're so glad you're here. My name is Dao Garanga, and I'm here with Kishore Chandra. Our tri-host Dagopi is not able to be with us at this moment, so it's just the two of us and all of you, those who are here in our live Zoom studio audience, as well as all of you out there in podcast land. Whatever you're doing, I'm so glad you tuned in today. This is your daily spiritual check-in. We just check in with each other, and we're rounding out one full year because we started at the beginning of 2022, and we've been connecting over a year together. And if it's your first time listening in, our little premise is that we check in, see how we're doing. Usually we're 1 or 2 word answers of we're doing good, and then we move on to read the Bhagavad Gita, spiritual text, to give us a little bit of spiritual insight and wisdom to our day, to our lives, unpack a few takeaways, and then move it on forward with our day. It's generally how we do it, right? Anything else?
No, that's how we do it.
That's how we do it. So how you doing?
I'm doing I'm slowly feeling some inspiration coming along, which is nice to feel.
From a previous place of uninspiration?
Yeah, like yesterday we were talking about, I think like sometimes people get scared of like I'm doing bad or I'm doing uninspired. It's just like you're never gonna feel 180% inspired and amazing all the time, And we were talking about this yesterday, like life is just the ebb and flows of going up and down. And so I wouldn't say I was feeling necessarily like uninspired, but I was feeling a little bit like, just blah. And yeah, I've been feeling like a tinge of like, ooh, this is like, it's like something. I don't know how to describe it in words, but something is coming, which is good. And so I'm feeling good, feeling inspired, sheltered.
Haribol. When you mentioned starting to feel inspired again, I was like, oh my God, what's wrong? You're not inspired all the time, perpetually at 180%? Which, like, how many of us are in that space?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think I'm curious if it's like a sense where we need other people to be doing well because we're not doing well all the time. And if other people aren't, then it's just like, oh my God, we're all just a sinking ship. And so we need other people around us to be doing well because I'm the one that's struggling and I need the other people around me to pick me up. And I appreciate being able to just say, you know what, like, how you doing? Like, I'm not good. Well, why not? No, I'm just not good right now. Because I think the biggest lie, or the biggest, I was just sharing this morning. My wife and I were talking this morning that I don't think the struggles of life in and of themselves are usually the hardest part. It's the stories and the meaning that we ascribe to it. Nothing good ever happens to me. My life sucks. Things are never going to get better. It's always going to be this way. God hates me. And, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I have no friends. And the stories and meaning that we then therefore like ascribe to it, that like makes it so much harder mentally and emotionally. But to be able to like, no, I'm not doing well right now, and it's a couple of days, and it's just like it's cold outside. It's like 10 degrees in New York, and it's like it's like, do I need to lie and say that it's sunny and beautiful outside right now? Like, how is the weather? It's gorgeous. It's just beautiful. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Meanwhile, everyone's looking out the window and it's like frosted out there, and like windows are cracking. It's like, no, it's cold and it's miserable outside. And I think, Krishna mentions as such in the Bhagavad Gita that like when we come to this place of spiritual life, it allows us to, I like last night, Tuesday night kirtan, you led kirtan, Kishore, and you shared, you led really nice kirtan, by the way. Our sound system, we got to fix our sound system. It was just like better
like
to just
constant. If it's
not
one thing, it's another.
If it's not one thing, it's another. It's not
we like
one
figured
thing,
one thing out, and now this.
and then this. And so it's like, anyways. But aside from that, I thought it was really sweet. But you said one thing, you were talking about mantra. And normally we think of the word mantra as like to go beyond the mind or transcend the mind, but you also said mantra to transform the mind, mantra, transform. And so I think to transform the mind, meaning to shift the way that we look at things and perceive things and think about things.
Mm,
And, spiritual life thus far in the Gita, this journey of like laying down the foundation of the soul and spirituality and understanding of our eternal position and beyond this life and not identifying with the things of this world. It doesn't make the circumstances of life necessarily change or be different, but it allows us to interact with them differently. And
mm,
Krishna mentions early on that like happiness and distress, shuka and dukkha,
mhm,
come and go in this life, and we have to tolerate them just like the winter and summer seasons.
mm,
So
mm,
it's not like when it's cold outside, a spiritual is just like, this is great. And like, it just feels like 80 degrees to me in California right now. It's like, no, it's cold, it's frigid, and I didn't sleep well last night, and I don't want to go outside, and it's causing some seasonal depression and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I learned to not let that sink
mm.
into that and let that just become my identity. And I know that it's going to pass. And
Yeah.
I know that this is just like a phase of the day, phase of the season, phase of life. I will outlast this. I am more than this. I will be guided through this. And then when it becomes summer, when it becomes a high point in life, we don't get lost in that either. And just thinking, you know what, this is it. I finally made it. It's like this will change also. This too shall pass,
Mhm.
you know. And so I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of courage and a lot of sincerity and realness and just being able to say like, actually, like I'm really low right now,
Mhm.
and then not like reacting, be like, well, what are we gonna do about it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about because I think that when people sometimes share like that they're not doing well or they're not feeling inspired or they're not whatever, I think a common tendency from others is to like try and figure out the solution to it. And it's like maybe it doesn't need a solution right now. Like the solution will come in time and it will be very personal and it's you're not going to fix everyone's problems, you know. And I think just being able to like be there for a friend or a family member or a significant other and just be there with them, like non-judgmental, just be there with them like, oh yeah, and like try to commiserate with them in some sort of sense. Because even in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm skipping all the way to the end here. Spoiler alert. But even in the Bhagavad Gita, like Krishna gives all of this teachings in Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapters to Arjuna. And at the end of Bhagavad Gita, he says, okay, now I have spoken all of this to you, and you decide what you're gonna do. Like you decide. It's not like you have to do this, and if you don't do this, then you're gonna fail at everything, and you're not gonna be a spiritualist, and etc. And he really trusts Arjuna to make the decision that he needs to make for himself. And it's that I do agree with you. Sometimes the things that we present, whether they be good or whether they be, I'm using air quotes, everyone, whether they be good or bad, it does sometimes like create it's like a mirror, and other people will see it and it can affect them like, oh, they're not doing well. Am I doing well? Should I make them do better? Should I, ooh, it's kind of like this. And so I've been really focusing lately, like a personal practice of mine lately has just been like, let me just like be with what I'm feeling right now, whether it's quote unquote bad or quote unquote good. Like, let me just sit with it, not try to solve it, not try to get out of it, not try to like, get upset about it. And let me just like sit with it. I was over Christmas, it was kind of tough because I was a little sick over Christmas. And I'm not a Christmas person. It's very odd to me. Like I don't understand it just because I wasn't raised with Christmas.
What
Um,
what are these lights and trees and
I like the
elves?
decorations. Like I think it's
Why
like really sweet.
why are there candy canes everywhere?
But I just
What
like
is
I'm
this
not
weirdness?
I'm just like it's not like ingrained in my memory as a child or a teenager or a grown up for that matter.
Shores grew up as a Jehovah's Witness.
Yes, yes. So, but that being said, like still like the energy of everyone coming together for Christmas. Not everyone, but a lot of people. But I was sick at home alone, and I was kind of just like on my couch, like, and I was feeling not so great. And it was actually a really nice moment, because I was just like, you know what? I can either just like be here and be sad about being sad, or like be mad about being whatever, or I can just like, give into it a little bit and just like kind of enjoy and like it, and take this as a time to like be with myself. And I did that. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go gung ho and like really make this about self-care, and really make this about just like being with myself. And I like read and had like a mini spa day by myself, and like took like a 2-hour bath, and was like all the Ayurvedic oils and salts and facials and everything. And it was just like epic. And then afterwards, I like felt completely rejuvenated. I was telling my mom, I was like, I'm really happy that I didn't, because my parents did do like something, but I told them I wasn't going to go because I wasn't feeling well, and I didn't want to get anyone sick. And I told her, I was like, I'm really happy that I took those days, because like I feel, I'm not 100%, but I feel like much better, both physically and like internally. Like I just feel like, yeah, that was really nice to just not try to like run away from the feeling, and try to like immediately fix it by just pushing myself, and being with it and see what it's trying to tell me. And so that was really nice. I think those feelings can sometimes be jarring, and scary, but like you were mentioning, Dayal, it's like feelings, and whether they be good or bad, um they're showing us something, but at the same time they have the potential to like take us away. It's like the summer is a wonderful example, because it's so exciting, and it's so like whoop, like let's go and do all the things. But that's going to go away too, and we're eventually going to have to come down from the high.
Unless you live in Florida where you have to leave, where people actually leave during the summer.
That's true.
But aside for that, for everyone else in the world, I think it says something like that in the Gita, like for everyone other than Florida, happiness is compared to the summer. But I appreciate this is from our talk yesterday, and where we are in the Gita to now in our journey. We kind of went from the beginning of the Gita, second chapter, all the way to the end of the Gita, where Krishna gives a choice to make our own decisions. And where we are now is in the third chapter we've been reading. And we're just almost halfway through the third chapter. This section of the title of the third chapter is Karma Yoga. And we're talking about sort of talking about the idea of Dharma a little bit, and the idea of the, I mean, this word isn't used in the Gita itself in this section, but it's coming to my mind, the idea of sadhana, or the idea of like a disciplined practice that we can set in our lives, that that a discipline in our life that we set that's not dictated by the comings and goings of our experiences of life. Like, what is that anchor that we can set, and what is that how can we learn? Like, I think that there's this sense of this idea of well, like, for example, the last verse that we read, verse 19, therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. And so this idea of like, okay, it's not always going to in because I think we get thrown off sometimes. We ended this in yesterday's, a spiritual practice doesn't always feel sexy. That was my tagline. That if I'm practicing my spiritual life and I wake up depressed one morning, or I don't feel like doing something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that something's not quote unquote working, or it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to like change this sort of like completely, like change course completely. Like sometimes there is value in just staying a steady course and allowing the results of something to come to fruition over time. And I think that's what Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to do in this section of like, listen, like use a deeper sense of intelligence in terms of how you are orchestrating your life and the things that you do. And like, don't be so concerned about the immediate outcomes, or don't get thrown off by like I love the way that you gave the example of like, okay, this is what I was feeling on Christmas, and this is what I did in response to that to take care of myself. And like, we have to deal with our emotions, we have to deal with our feelings, otherwise they could get away from us. But in the process, we deal with that, but then we also carry forward with our responsibilities in life, or the path that has been set for us, or that we've set for ourselves, um, so that we don't just get lost in the storm. Like the storm is going to come and the waves are going to come and we're going to get tossed around and it's going to feel different things at different times. But like, what's that one simple step I can take today, regardless of the waves of the storm, that can like put my foot on the ground and feel a sense of stability? And in verse 20, which is, we haven't read this verse yet, we've been the previous verse, so just for sense of moving forward in the Gita, Krishna mentions kings such as Janaka, previous great king, attain perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. And so Krishna is now shifting gears and going to the space of like setting an example, which we may or may not, some of us would be like, I'm not looking to set an example. I'm just trying to, I was just trying to get through the day. But he's saying that even people, highly advanced spiritual people, still go about their daily duties in life to show us the importance of, where am I going with this, Kishore? Show us the importance of.
Yeah, well, in the purport, King Janaka is the father of Sita, like Sita and Ram. And in the purport, he's mentioning that, even though he didn't necessarily have an interest in the material world, he still went about his duties to kind of show the public how to act. And it ties into the next verse as well, which says, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And specifically in this purport, it really goes into the idea of teacher, the idea of, and I really like how later in this purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that like the natural positions in life that put you into this position of leader, whether that's a king or head of state or a parent or a school teacher or whatever type of teacher there is. And I think it's a really interesting, it is shifting gears, and I'm happy that that's happening, because it is such an interesting thing to note, the importance of having a teacher, or the importance of having someone to look up to. But then also it's really important to acknowledge the fact that that relationship in general in society has been kind of what's a less dramatic word than decimated,
Decimated.
I'm gonna go with decimated. It's kind of been decimated a little bit, just because like the general trust of a guru or a spiritual teacher or a president or anyone in power, in governmental power, it's like there's a lot of mistrust around, and it's very scary, I think, to figure out like, who do I place my trust in, because there's been so many breakings of that trust. And so I think it's simultaneously important to note, like, what Krishna is saying here, that like, no, like one has to, he's telling Arjuna, like one has to, even if you're not interested in it, because we have to remember the context that Arjuna is trying to like run away from his problems and he doesn't want to do it. So he's telling Arjuna, like, no, you're setting an example. So one, how are we leaders in our own lives? Because I think that we all are, and the examples that we're setting, sometimes I have to think about that. I'm just like, I just want to be on the couch all day for 5 weeks. And, and I'm like, wait a minute. No, it's like, okay, I have a responsibility to my community. I have a responsibility to others like this. And I think I feel like I'm ranting, but I'll end with one point here. I think it's important actually, because I think society kind of convinces us to thinking that we live in silos and that what we do, doesn't necessarily matter or this or etc. But, I'm so inspired by what the Bhakti Center and what in general kind of like Bhakti communities do. And it's just that they build communities, and community is so important. It's like, how is what I am doing affecting others? And sometimes it can feel, and please take this from me personally, I'm saying this, sometimes it can feel kind of like overwhelming, like, oh my God, everything I'm doing is affecting others and this and whatever. And I'm the kind of person who's just like, I just want to hide under the blanket. But it's also kind of, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but it brings a sense of dignity,
Purpose, dignity,
purpose. Yeah, purpose.
purpose.
Like, it's like what I do matters, like what I do matters. It matters to the greater whole. And yeah, I love that. It brings a sense of purpose. Exactly. And so this is a really interesting topic, because like the world, the social place of the world right now is really like this, and the idea of teachers and etc. But I'm ranting. I want to hear your take on this.
I really think that it speaks a lot to the idea of role models. I was looking at the purport here, because in one sense it can speak to us of like, okay, what I do matters. And it is true. Like people are watching, whether we know it or not, whether it's our family, whether it's our colleagues, whether it's our friends, whether it's our children, whether it's whoever. Um, I mean, there are so many instances I can think of where I saw the way a random stranger did something that I noticed from a distance, that I never interact with them, but I saw them and it stuck with me, whether a positive or negative example. And there are people in my life that have affected my life in ways that they don't even know or are aware of. My observation of them. Maybe it's somebody that I don't even know or never met, or maybe it's somebody that I do know, but I saw from across the room, or I'm just observing the general way that they're going about their life, and it's inspiring to me, or it's instructional to me, whatever it might be. And so it's not that like anytime anybody, takes an example from us, that they come up and share us and let us know, like we are all affecting each other in different ways. And so that's the truth. And so in one sense, it speaks to us about like, hey, like the way that I choose to live my life does have an impact on the people around me. But then I also think it flip sides itself into like role models of like, who do I take my cue from? And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the very first lines of this purport, Bhagavad Gita 321, we're talking about like whatever action somebody great people follow, the common people, meaning like people in general, we naturally look up. The thrust of it is that we naturally look up to leaders. We naturally look up to people to set an example for us. And oh, Govinda, sorry. Purport: people in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. And then he says this example: a leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. And there's that anecdote, the story of like a mother bringing her child to some guru and saying, please teach my child to stop eating sweets. And he says, I can do that, but come back in 2 weeks. And they're like, okay. And so she leaves and comes back in 2 weeks and says, please, can you teach my child to stop eating sweets? He says, stop eating sweets. And then he listens. And it's like, how did you do that? And why did you make me wait 2 weeks? He's like, I had to stop eating sweets first. Um, and so this idea and what's interesting about it is that Prabhupada says a leader can teach this public to stop smoking if he himself smokes, but it doesn't say if he himself or herself has ever smoked ever in his life. I was watching a video online of somebody talking about how like we go to therapy and we expect, like, would you go to therapy would you go to therapy with somebody who themselves has struggled with anxiety or depression? And we normally think like, no, that person's a mess. Why would I go to them? but then they have like they were reenacting this video scene of like they went to the doctor and the doctor came in and was going to administer some medicine, and the patient was like, have you ever been sick before? And the doctor's like, yes, I have been sick before. It's like, no, 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 no. I can't take medicine from you. I can't take medical advice from you. Like, you've been sick before. Like, how can you, who's been sick, help me who's currently being sick, you know? And I think we create this thing where the people that we take examples for need to be these shining emblems of perfection. But actually the reality is that, like, because also I think people sometimes feel this sense of like, I'm not qualified to be a teacher. I'm not qualified to set an example. And anybody that I do take example from needs to be perfect. And I think that the reality, from tying it back to the beginning of the conversation, is like, one of the greatest pitfalls or one of the greatest disservices we do in spiritual communities is when we don't allow space for people to struggle. And when we don't give space for leaders to struggle, it creates a culture of hypocrisy and then putting up a front that ultimately leads to this place of like a bubble bursting, and but rather like creating space where everybody has space to be human, everybody has space to go through the struggle. But what we are asked of is honesty and integrity. Integrity, I don't think, means being perfect all the time. Integrity is a place of not hiding things for the sake of being seen differently than what is really going on. And I think that the flip side of a spiritual community of continuous acceptance and working with, we're all in a rehabilitation center together. You know, the material world is one giant rehabilitation center, one giant spiritual rehabilitation center where we are. You know, sometimes people ask me like, how do you get through such, you know, how do you get through whatever, you know, life is just hard. And then it's like, because I know that material life is one big spiritual rehabilitation center, and we're all working on it and we're all getting there. And so I think that A, allowing ourselves that space, B, allowing other people, even leaders, that space, and then C, making sure that we're talking about like going through tough emotions and whatever, making sure that we do identify role models and leaders and inspirations in our life, whether it's people that we physically know, like, and have time with, or whether it's people, the social media accounts that we follow, the podcasts that we listen to, the people that we take inspiration from, because those are the people and the places that are going to help us in those moments of either sinking or rising out of it, is going to help us move in the direction that we want to. So I think in this section also, we're learning about the value of role models and what it means to be a role model and what it means to have those in our life so that we can be lifted up when we need to.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, we did it. Okay, guys, thanks. We got takeaways. Kimberly's normally our taker away or our wrap it up acharya, but she's been on a road trip cross country this week and in Alabama right now, so she might even just be in a car. So if anybody has any takeaways, please just type them in the chat and we'll read them out for our lovely listeners. Dana K wrote, "So true." Not sure what she wrote. So true to. We've been talking, spewing a bunch of stuff out. The counselors that I've gone to that have struggled with what I'm struggling with have helped me much more because they get it and understand on a whole different level than those that just study about it in a textbook. I was having a practical example of this when I was in California because I was helping my 10-year-old nephew with his math homework. And my stepdad was expressing his like frustration because it's like, it's insane, like the kind of stuff these kids are expected to like do and figure out. I'm like, it's like there's like this math problem. Just like, how are you supposed to know how to do this? And like what, and he was telling me how like oftentimes textbooks are written by people who, I'm not making a blanket statement, but he's saying textbook can sometimes be written by people who have no practical life experience. Like you go to school your whole life, you get your master's degree, you get your PhD, and then you immediately just graduate from school and you start, you know, writing textbooks because you're a professor or whatever it may be. And my stepfather, who's an engineer, was saying how like you know, a lot like they give these math problems, you know, and like that about like engineering, but it's like they're not written by people who are engineers who have experience, you know, building ships or fixing engines or like whatever it might be. They're just like theoretical problems, you know. And so sometimes people that are just writing textbooks or reading from a textbook, you know, you don't get that natural actual life experience. And sometimes people that may not have the degree, we're not bashing on school here. We have degrees. Kishore has a master's degree in urban planning.
Yeah, in urban planning. But that being said, I think standardized testing is not great.
Just wanted to put that out there, kids. Burn your standardized tests. But you know, I appreciate that. Yes, there's a lot to be learned from the school of hard knocks.
Yes.
All right. That's the takeaway we got from the crew. What's your closing word, Kishore?
I think my takeaway is that I'm gonna go with similar to your takeaway from yesterday, that the role models that we have in our life don't have to like that we think need to fill that space, don't need to be like extravagant and sexy and like doing the most and like this like picture perfect idea of like what we think of a role model. Because in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Vedic texts, there are so many role models and there are so many wonderful saints and people that we can look up to that might break the mold of what we think a role model is supposed to look like in our contemporary age. And, you know, if you just look at the kind of people that people in general look up to these days, it's very interesting. It's very extravagant and kind of like holding yourself to this extreme degree of like, I've succeeded in every aspect of life. I'm famous, I'm rich, I'm this, I'm etc., I'm whatever. And sometimes ticking those contemporary boxes of what it looks like to be successful, I'm using air quotes,
A
isn't
lot of air quotes these
a lot
days.
of air quotes these days, isn't necessarily like the things that we might actually be needing, you know. And it's when we look into Srimad Bhagavatam, there's really beautiful stories of spiritualists, you know, who have come so close to Krishna, and they're definitely not ticking those boxes of like of what we might think, you know, nowadays a contemporary role model might look like. So yeah, I think my takeaway is to kind of just like broaden our perspective of what we might think a role model should be. And yeah, this is such a wonderful, interesting point here of role models. Yeah,
Mm,
that's my takeaway.
thank you. My takeaway is make sure I have role models. You know, sometimes and we it's easy just to live life just kind of on your own. And a role model is different than like a fan crush or someone that like, you know, whether like a star or a celebrity, like your favorite actor or your favorite musician or whatever it is. Like a role model is like who's it that like who's that anchor that like redirecting post that like I look to that's like, oh, like that's what I want to be more like. That's what I want to like direct more of myself to. And I may not be there, but it's like at least I have that like that little sticky note on my mirror that like of like, oh, and that I can go to like get some helpful um helpfulness. Thank you guys all so much for being here with us. We love you. We're grateful for you. If you want to join in our live Zoom studio audience, just visit us, our Spirit Matters website at the Bhakti Center website, or write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. And we're always happy to hear from you. And be well, take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.